Good morning, everybody. Let us slowly begin our class. So, did you go through the text? We are going to continue reading the book. Do you have any question or remark before we start reading the text? Why it's not working? Problem with connection? It's not working, right? No, something is wrong, I think, with the connection. Let me share my screen. Yeah, so as far as I remember, we have covered our reading up to here, right? So basically, we have started to discuss about chitta, right? And the discussions that we had before starting to read this text is, I think, sufficient to follow this text. You already have a good amount of understanding with regard to the Dhamma theory. Also, you have a good amount of understanding with regard to the two truths and the methods that are adopted in the Abhidhamma philosophy. Come here. Can you close the door? So now, with all this study, it is easier to follow this text now. And also, if you remember, I said that when you are following this text, Abhidhammata Sangaha, time to time you can refer to the other text if you have some difficulties, right? To check Professor Karunadasa's text. If you have gone through the text, you are familiar with the topics of discussion in this particular chapter on chitta. So what you have to do is you have to make your own notes. Otherwise, it would be difficult to follow, because as you go along, there are a bit of complexity there in the exposition of different types of chittas, different classes of chittas, right? Their characteristics, functioning. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind is that here we are going to discuss about dharma in Abhidharma. So all these dharmas are momentary dharmas. So the discussion focuses on either a particular type of dharma or a particular type of chitta, cetasika. It could be rupa dhamma, right? Or a series of dharmas. So when you talk about dharmas, dharma means the basic factors of existence, momentary existence. They are characterized by arising and ceasing. So every moment of our ordinary understanding, thousands of these cognitive moments or moments of dharma pass by. So you have to keep this in mind. So what we are dealing with here is dharmas, first of all, arising and ceasing of dharmas, continuity of the dharmas, right? So there could be a particular cognitive moment or discussion of a particular dharma, or there could be even a discussion of sub moment. So there could be a discussion of a particular moment of dharma, its arising and ceasing. There could also be a discussion of sub moments within that dhamma, momentary dhamma, and its causes. What are the causes that are giving rise to the arising of this particular dharma, and how it is becoming a cause itself to give rise to the following dharmas. So this is now the approach that is followed is in terms of paramatta satya, right? In terms of dharmas. But time to time you would have exposition based on sammuti satya, because there could be some examples and similes. So we have been discussing that in the Theravada Abhidhamma, dharma is characterized, or paramatta satya is classified as 4, right? And we are now focusing on the discussion of chitta, and this is something that we have already covered, that when you are discussing on chitta, it can be understood in these 4 different ways. It could be understood in terms of kama vachara chitta, rupa vachara chitta, arupa vachara chitta, and lokuttara chitta. These 4 broad classification. Now under each of these, there are sub classification. Okay, otherwise you are not going to have 89 types of chittas. Fundamentally, it is the one chitta that manifests in different ways. When the mind is overcome by anger, it is a chitta of anger. When it is overcome by greed, it is a chitta of greed. When it is overcome by mindfulness, when it is filled with mindfulness, then it is a chitta of mindfulness, sati. When you have wisdom, it is a chitta having wisdom. Can you differentiate between your cognition, your chitta, and the faculty of wisdom? Or it is one and the same thing, just giving different names? So we will come to those discussions later, especially when we will be discussing the combinations between chitta and cetasika. Yes, and then we have been discussing about consciousness, 3 different definitions. Do you remember these three different definitions provided with regard to consciousness, chitta? In terms of agent, in terms of instrument, in terms of activity. And we have discussed that the one that is focused in the discussion of Abhidhamma, it is the activity aspect of it, the activity of cognizing aspect, the process of cognizing, knowing. So these are the four classes, and these are subdivisions. We will come to that very quickly. Let us see how much we can cover today. Sense sphere chitta, there are 54 out of 89. These 54 chittas belong to Kamavachara world. And these are again classified in terms of akusala chitta, in terms of ahetuka chitta, and in terms of Kamavachara sobana chitta, beautiful consciousness, beautiful mind moments. And there are 15 chittas belonging to Rupavachara world. 5 kusala, 5 vipaka, and 5 kriya. They are all connected. So when you talk about kusala or akusala, and then their resultant karma, they are basically connected. Even the functional ones also. They are just different phases of the same chitta. And then there are 12 chittas belonging to immaterial sphere, arupavachara. So this is the first category, this is the second one, and this is the third one, right? And now here, this is the fourth one, supramundane chittas, lokuttara chittas. These lokuttara chittas are the chittas belonging to Arya Puggala. So once you enter into the stream, the first of the 8 types of Arya Puggala is called the one who entered into the path, Sotapatti Magga, Sotapatti Phala. So as soon as you enter into the stream, it is called Sotapatti. So there is a clear-cut distinction between Lokya and Lokuttara. All the other 3 types of chittas, Kamavachara, Rupavachara, and Arupavachara, fall into the category of Lokya chittas. So having Lokya chittas means you are still a Putujjana, a common worldling. Having a supramundane chitta, Lokuttara chitta, means you are no more a Putujjana, you became an Arya. So from Putujjana, you change to Arya. So from the moment you become Arya, it is completely a different journey. So what you need is to make a move from Lokya to Lokuttara. Once you enter into that stream, according to Buddhist explanation, you are safe. You are on the safe side in the sense that once you fall into the stream, you move forward. You do not come back to the Lokiya states anymore. Right? So, but it may take several lifetimes. If you are diligent enough, within this single lifetime, you can end your samsaric journey. But if you are not diligent enough, or if you do not have that kind of environment or support or karmic, force for you to move forward, it may take several lifetimes. Maximum lifetimes mentioned are, I think, 7 lifetimes. Right? Now, these 7 lifetimes could be as human beings, could be even as other beings. You have a question? Yeah. Who can answer Venerable Buntam's question? Why these 2 numbers, 1 or 5? So 1.
That's actually depending on the 5 accompanied. What was it?
Jhanic factors.
Yes, karmic factors. According to the 5, the number of karmic factors accompanied. That's why it's one
Jhanic
of
factors. Yeah, jhanic factors. Jhana factors. Cannot connect to the screen. Don't know why. This is not working. See, I think some problem with the plug. I'm not sure. Yeah. So it is 1 without the jhana factors. If you include the jhana factors, it becomes 5. Are you familiar with the jhana factors? You are familiar. You have just forgot. Vitakka vichara piti sukha ekaggata. These are jhana factors, right? So when these states are accompanied by jhana factors, then they are counted as 5. Without the jhana factors, it is 1. Right? So it also suggests that when you enter into the stream entry, in the stream, you become a sotapanna. When you carry out your practice, it is not necessary that you will have to develop jhanas. Right? So you can proceed in the path towards liberation or nibbana without entering into jhanas. You can also do that with entering into the jhanas. So the difference between developing jhanas and not developing jhanas is that as long as attainment of enlightenment or becoming an arahant or destruction of cankars, asava, or defilements is concerned, jhana factors are not required. What is required is a complete eradication of defilements. Maybe cannot connect to the screen today. We will try to fix it later, but during the break time. I think something is, I don't know, it is, no, there is a message that says that there is a problem with some kind of driver or something. So some software problem, I think. Anyway, I think most of you are joining through Zoom also, right? So you are able to see the screen. Come. I don't know. Okay, so yeah, so that is the difference between these two types of chittas, one with jhana factors, the other without the jhana factors. But if you just develop jhanas alone, you do not become an Arya Puggala. So as you can see, Rupa Vachara Chittas and Arupa Vachara Chittas are representative of Rupa Jhanic Chittas and Arupa Jhana Chittas. And the famous example is of Devadatta. If you remember, Buddha's cousin who became a monk and then carried out serious practice. And he developed all the jhanas. Once you develop jhanas, you can have abhiyans. You can have psychic power, supernatural power. You can fly through the sky. You can go through the wall. So Devadatta had all these powers. Right? So he was able to convince Ajatasattu on his side, right? And both of them together wanted to take over the Magadhan kingdom plus the Buddha's Sasana. So that was their idea. Yes. So there are 8 or 40 accordingly, the Paramatta Chittas. Yeah. No, he's not on the supramundane level yet. How do you develop jhanas? By following samatha meditation. Okay, the objects of samatha meditation is different kasinas, right? 40 meditation objects are mentioned. Most of them you can, take as objects to develop your concentration. A jhanic mind represents a focused, concentrated mind. So your mind is so focused that you are, able to do things that are beyond people's imagination. One-pointedness of mind. On the other hand, vipassana practice, vipassana meditation is concerned with understanding the reality of nature. To do that also, you need to develop a certain amount of concentration, because without the concentration, you cannot really understand, cannot really focus on these aspects. And the reality of existence is characterized by anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So these are the things that one needs to properly understand in Vipassana with regard to his own existence, with regard to his five aggregates. Within your body, outside your body, whatever is coming in contact with you, everything, every bit of sensation, every bit of your thought, everything is impermanent, anicca. And once you grasp on that, once you have deluded mind, ignorance, that will produce dukkha. And because there is no self-subsisting or self entity existing there. So this is not intellectually understanding. This is truly, really experiencing it. So once that is done, you are a noble person because you destroy the idea of self. There is no ego anymore. Yeah. So as we have been discussing, one can become an arahant only by destroying the asavas. This person does not destroy asavas. He develops only the supernormal powers. So by developing supernormal powers, he can read other people's mind. As you are saying, yes, that is true. But to become an arahant, it is not necessary. You do not need to read other people's mind. Yes. Okay, so in this book, we have been discussing about these different definitions of chitta, and the last one, especially the aspect of cognizing, is given the importance in our discussion. And what it says here, let us read, continue reading from this passage. The third definition in terms of sheer activity is regarded as the most adequate of the three. That is, chitta is fundamentally an activity, a process of cognizing or knowing an object. It is not an agent or instrument possessing actual being in itself, cognizing. The definitions in terms of agent and instrument are proposed to refute the wrong view of those who hold that a permanent self or ego is the agent and instrument of cognition. The Buddhist thinkers point out, by means of these definitions, that it is not a self that performs the act of cognition, but chitta or consciousness. So what it says here is that even though you focus on the third definition, chitta in terms of mere cognizing or knowing an object, the other two definitions are also true. They are the Abhidhamika masters came out with these two definitions as well to refute the idea that there is some kind of self within beings that is cognizing everything, that is knowing everything, or that is the leading factor assisting other faculties in your mind, in your body to know something. So when it is said that chitta can function as an agent or an instrument, it doesn't mean that there is something called chitta that is existing alone as a self entity. It does not mean that. So all these three definitions actually say the same from different perspective. That's all. You can discuss about the chitta in terms of agent, in the sense that when you talk about cognizing or knowing, it is the chitta that does the work, right? But as we know, chitta cannot function without chetasikas. Chetasikas cannot function without chittas. And chetasikas are called mental concomitants, right? Because they are accompanied by chitta. And in that congregation, in that, how do you say, group, chitta is the leading factor, not the chetasikas. So therefore, it is said that chitta is functioning as an instrument for the chetasikas to carry out the work of knowing or cognizing. So it is in that respect, chitta is considered as an instrument. But when you just focus on mere action, mere cognizing, that represents chitta. What is chitta? It is mere knowing, mere cognizing. The chitta is nothing other than the act of cognizing. That act is necessarily impermanent, marked by rise and fall. Now, this is a second layer. Now, so far you came to know, of course, from the aspect of, chitta as agent and instrument, you come to the other aspect of it, that is mere knowing. And now this is a different layer. What it says is that even this aspect of cognizing, this activity of cognizing is impermanent, marked by rise and fall. So there is arising, there is ceasing. Between arising and ceasing, probably there is some, sub moment of sthiti. So upada, titi, bhanga, right? Upada, titi, bhanga. Upada arising, titi existing, and then falling. So I think there is some purpose, attached to this idea of upada, titi, bhanga, especially with regard to titi. But here the focus is upada and bhanga, arising and ceasing. Here they even do not focus on this titi aspect yet. To elucidate the nature of ultimate reality, the Pali commentators propose 4 defining devices by means of which it can be delimited. Now you talk about any ultimate reality, these are the 4 defining devices that are used to explain an ultimate reality, and they are lakkhana, characteristics; rasa, function; pachupattana, manifestation; and padatthana, proximate cause. If you like, you can note down. So these are the 4 aspects, characteristics of an ultimate reality. What does it mean? The salient quality of the phenomena, the important quality of the phenomena. Its function, it means its performance of a concrete task or achievement of a goal. And its manifestation, the way it presents itself within experience. Its proximate cause, the principal condition upon which it depends. Now, there is an example below. It would be clearer with the example given below. In the case of Chitta, its characteristic is the knowing of an object. So that is the characteristic, right? That is its main quality. The quality of Chitta is knowing, cognizing. Its function is to be a forerunner of the mental factors in that it presides over them and is always accompanied by them. So how does it function? When you talk about Chitta, you have to talk about Chaitasika, and in the case of Chitta Chaitasika combination, in a particular moment of cognition, Chitta as a leader. Okay, so that is the function of Chitta. Its manifestation, the way it appears in the meditator's experience, is as a continuity of process, sandhana. Now, note here that when it is talking about the manifestation of Chitta, particularly here, the focus given on the experience of a meditator. So what it means is that when you talk about ultimate reality, Paramattha Dhamma, mostly it is associated with the experience of a meditator, because it is the, how do you say, area of a meditator only, who can really understand and experience this functioning of Chittas in all details. Its proximate cause is mind matter, because consciousness cannot arise alone in the complete absence of mental factors and material phenomena. So within this paragraph, it becomes very clear that there is no such thing as consciousness existing alone. It is also a production of so many factors, and therefore it is not permanent. Something that is produced is not permanent or everlasting. Because it needs causes and conditions to arise and function. Right? So that is the explanation that is given here when it says, because consciousness cannot arise alone in the complete absence of mental factors and material phenomena, Chaitasika and Rupa Dhamma. Okay. So now what it says here, while Chitta has a single characteristic as the cognizing of an object, a characteristic that remains the same in all its diverse manifestations, the Abhidhamma distinguishes Chitta into a variety of types that we know. These types, also called Chittas, reckoned as 89, or by a finer method of differentiation as 121. So you are already familiar with these divisions and classifications generally, right? We have seen it in the chart here. So you can look at the chart and count 89, 121. What we ordinarily think of as consciousness is really a series of Chittas, momentary acts of consciousness occurring in such rapid succession that we cannot detect the discrete occasions which are of diverse types. This needs no further explanation, I think. It is very clear here. This is connected to our previous discussion. Why Chitta cannot exist alone, right? Because what it says here, what we ordinarily think of as consciousness, Chitta, is really a series of Chittas. So a Chitta, a consciousness, is consisted of several other subconsciousness. See? So there are a series of Chittas. In other words, momentary acts of consciousness. So that is why in the beginning of the class, I said that the discussion basically focuses on either a moment of Chitta or the sub-moments within the Chitta or a series of Chittas in terms of causes and effects. The Abhidhamma not only distinguishes the types of consciousness, but more importantly, it also exhibits them as ordered into a cosmos, a unified and closely interwoven whole. Now you have this Chitta, and this Chitta can be understood in terms of 89 types. Different moments of Chitta, right? At different times. Within yourself, within myself. But this classification is also representative of the states of consciousness and the states of living within the cosmos. That is what it means. Is it clear? Navindaka? Any question, Buntam? Okay, let us go further and see what else the text is discussing. To do so, it employs several overlapping principles of classification. Okay, so that is not the only classification that is provided in terms of 4 classes. The first of these, introduced in the present section of the Sangaha, is the plane of consciousness, Bhumi. There are 4 planes of consciousness, 3 are mundane, the sense sphere, the fine material sphere, and the material sphere. The 4th plane is the supramundane that we have already discussed. The word avachara sphere, which qualifies the first 3 planes, means that which moves about in or frequents a particular locality. The locality frequented is the plane of existence, also Bhumi, designated by the name of the sphere, that is, the sensuous, the fine material, and the immaterial planes of existence. So you see that a particular explanation is given with regard to the word avachara, sphere, in the sense that avachara refers to the act of moving or frequenting. So what it means is that in this Lokiya category of Chittas, Kamavachara, Rupavachara, Arupavachara, it could be your mind, or it could be your existence as a being. You move forward and backward. Sometimes you are human beings. Sometimes you are, what are you? Gods, demons, sometimes ghost, Oh my goodness. Sometimes animals, right? So within your consciousness, it can happen. It can happen in terms of your existence in different planes of existence, right? Within these three avachara. However, though the three spheres of consciousness have a particularly close connection with the corresponding planes of existence, they are not identical. This is clear, right? The spheres of consciousness are categories for classifying types of chittas. The planes of existence are realms or worlds into which beings are reborn and in which they pass their lives. So, even though there is a close connection between the types of chittas you are having right now, earlier or later in this life, that correspond to different planes of existence, bhumi, but there is also a distinction between these two categories, two types, because the type of chittas, different type of chittas that you are experiencing in this life is happening only within this existence of yours, right? In this lifespan. Even though the different types of chittas that you are experiencing in this lifespan is, connected to somehow it is, it can be compared to the different types of chittas of consciousness in different planes of existence. There is a difference, because when you talk about bhumi, planes of existence, you have to be born in a particular planes of existence, and you have to live your life, and then you have to pass away, right? Whereas the different types of chittas that are arising and ceasing within you in this existence is different, because it is all happening in one lifetime, right? In this mind and body that you are having right now. A definite relation nevertheless exists between the spheres of consciousness and the planes of existence. A particular sphere of consciousness comprises those types of consciousness which are typical of the corresponding plane of existence and which frequent that plane by tending to arise most often there. What is the characteristics of consciousness in a particular plane of existence? That is the question here. Do you get the message? No? So we are talking about types of chittas that one can have within one lifetime. There's 89 types of chittas classified into 4 avachara, right? 3 avachara and lokuttara. And the consciousness in different planes of existence, bhumi. So according to Theravada Buddhism, there are 31 planes of existence. I can show you the list here. I have collected a document. So these are the 31 planes of existence. Can you see? computer became very slow. Yes. So now this is called Kama Vachara. This from here. Okay, so there are 11 planes of existence. And it is divided into two, Kama Sugati and Kama Duggati. So human beings are here, Manusa Loka. Fifth, very close to Kama Duggati. So you just do little mistake, you just fall from there. Okay. So yeah, 4 Kama Duggati, Niraya, Tirachana, Peta, Asura. Hell, Tirachana is animals, animal world, Peta, ghost, Asura, demons, as Buntan mentioned. And these heavens, these are heavens, Chatumaharajika, Tavatimsa, Yama, Tusita, Nimmanarati, Paranimita, Pasavati, these are heavens. Okay, so you would see that most of the people, they would like to go to heavens only, right? There could be several reasons for that. One is that you can stay a long time, yes, and because of the enjoyment, and also these heavens fall in the same category, Kama Sugati Bhumi. So you have a tendency to, if you want to move forward, heavens are considered to be easiest to go. So probably that is why you want to go to heaven. So these are Kama Avachara, Kama Bhumi, and this is what happened. Rupa Loka. In the Rupa Loka, you have these planes of existence. And you can see here, there are 4 classifications, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And they are connected to your development of 4 different jhanas. Okay. So if you are able to establish first jhana, you can appear in one of these Rupa Loka. Second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana, accordingly, you can be born in one of these Rupa world. If you want more lasting happiness. Okay. So, and these 4 are Arupa Loka. You can jump back. Why not? So these are 31 planes of existence. Now here we are discussing about these 2 categories, right? One is the consciousness that is present within you. One is the external world as planes of existence, right? And the consciousness functioning in these planes of existence. So what it says here is that there is a relationship between the consciousness, the types of consciousness you are having right now, and also the different types of consciousness you are having in this Nama Rupa and the corresponding planes of existence. So there is a close connection. That is what it says. But what it says here is that a particular sphere of consciousness comprises those types of consciousness which are typical of the corresponding plane of existence and which frequent that plane by tending to arise most often there. So how do you, I mean, it is an obvious question that if you can experience all these different types of consciousness within this lifetime, what is the point of having these different planes of existence, right? So that is why what it says here is that you are a human being now, one of the 31 planes of existence, your human existence is characterized by the type of consciousness that is mostly how do you say, having the characteristics of human being, for example. So most often the kind of consciousness that you are having is human beings consciousness. That is the characteristic feature. You understand? When you are an animal, most often you are going to have the animal consciousness. Okay, if you are a tiger or deer, I don't know. So in the animal world, that is what characterizes that existence of that living creature, that being. In the form world, the type of consciousness that is representative of form jhana, for example. But you are not going to have form jhanic consciousness right now, right? Probably except those beings who are established, fully established spiritually. For example, we can see in the suttas that the Buddha and some of the Arahants, when they are not engaged in the activities of teaching or going for alms round or other activities, most of the time they are in jhanas. So once you become a sage like that, probably then those jhanic consciousness become, how do you say, you frequently experience them. You are frequently going into the jhanas. Yeah. What is the term? No, I think they are called Sukha Vipassaka Arahant. Dry insight practitioner. Yes. Sukha. Those aspects, I think they are associated factors. They are mental factors. Sankhara. So you have a chitta. The function of chitta is cognizing, and if it is associated with mental factors that represent akusala aspect, right? So then it becomes akusala consciousness, akusala mind, right? Right? Anger is a mental factor. For example, issa, machariya, jealousy, all these things, right? When the mind is, when the consciousness is associated with these factors, because consciousness does not function alone, right? And then it becomes an akusala mind. Now, this akusala mind doesn't last only for one moment, right? In a series of momentary consciousness. So that means in the series, if it is 229 moments of akusala consciousness very rapidly passing by, in this 229 akusala mind moment, every single preceding moment is functioning as a cause for the arising of next moment, right? So when you talk about this pure mind, pure consciousness, I am not sure. I don't know if it is present in the discussion of Theravada teachings, but in some schools of Mahayana, you have this idea of amala prajna, right? Without defilement, right? I think in the case of Theravada Abhidhamma or Theravada teaching, it should be the mind filled with wisdom, right? Prajna. And then this wisdom becomes the cause for the next moment, that is vimutti, right? But without any mental factors, can mind function? Can mind exist? That is a question that I think probably if you really want to know, you can look at a certain text and try to figure out. Because as far as this Theravada Abhidhamma is concerned, that is not the idea. When you experience nirvana, what happens? Nirvana in the Paramatta group of consciousness, nirvana is the object of their mind. So nirvana becomes the object of cognition. And now you have to know the characteristics of nirvana, right? Because otherwise, what is the cognition about? Because the fundamental idea is that a chitta needs an object to manifest itself as a consciousness, as a moment of consciousness. When you talk about cognizing, who is cognizing what? This is a material object, and then along with that object, pen, you may have the idea of likeness and dislikeness, and then there is feeling, pleasant, unpleasant feeling, attachment, all these things. And this happens very fast. Even neutral also, yeah, upekka. So what happens in the case of Arya Puggala is that they just see things as they are. That's all. Right? So all these are identification, isn't it? Even when you call it as a pen, that is an identification. How do you have this concept of pen, this cognition of pen? So that means you are already associated with a certain type of ideas, or what is it called? Designation, panyati. Okay, let's continue reading. Yes. How do I know? How do I know? How do I know what kind of chitta you are having? Different people probably having different types of chittas. How do I know? You are the one who should know. If you tell me what kind of chitta you are having, I can say that I am having a wonderful time. So probably a beautiful chitta, right? But you are probably having a difficult time to understanding. So yeah. Upekka, you mean upekka? Upekka means without judgment, right? Now this without judgment aspect can happen due to basically two reasons. One is that you go beyond all kinds of conceptions, therefore you do not identify either this or that is either pleasant or unpleasant, or due to complete delusion, ignorance, that you are not in a position to identify. You see, you understand? We will come to that very quickly when we come to discuss about akusala chittas, 12 types of akusala chittas, two of them rooted in delusion, upekka sagata, associated with upekka. Okay, let us continue reading. Still, a connection is found in that a sphere of consciousness is typical for the plane that shares its name. Moreover, the karmically active chittas of any particular sphere, the chittas that generate karma, tend to produce rebirth into the corresponding plane of existence, and if they succeed in gaining the opportunity to generate rebirth, they will do so only in that plane, not in any other plane. Hence, the tie between the spheres of consciousness and the corresponding planes of existence is extremely close. I think this is very clear. So the presentation here is very systematic actually. We are talking about these two categories of consciousness, and one is the different types of consciousness that in a particular existence, for example, as a human being, you are having right now, right? Different types of consciousness, and the other is corresponding planes of existence, bhumi. So what it says here is that how does it function? For example, you are a human being, but as we have seen just now, there are 31 planes of existence. How you are born in a particular plane of existence, how it is decided, right? So it is said here that the kind of action you perform, the kind of karmically active chitta. So it is said karmically active chitta in a particular sphere. So the kind of consciousness that you are having right now, which is karmically active, right? And if it becomes stronger, you are bound to take rebirth in a corresponding planes of existence. Okay, so if your human consciousness is too strong, probably you are going to come back to human world again, right? But if you are too much devoted to doing things that could allow you to be born in the heavenly abodes, right? So accordingly, we take birth in one of the heavens. And if you are able to develop your jhanas And if you are able to maintain that jhanic experience, you can be born in rupa jhana, rupa world or arupa world, depending on your jhanic experience. Now here there is a brief discussion about these three avacharas. There is nothing much to discuss actually. You can clearly understand it. It's not that complex. The word kama means both subjective sensuality, craving for sense pleasures, and objective sensuousness, the five external sense objects: visible forms, sounds, smells, taste, and tangibles. The kama bhumi is the sensuous plane of existence, which comprise 11 realms, the 4 woeful states, the human realm, and the 6 sensuous heavens. Sense sphere consciousness includes all those chittas that have their proper domain in the sensuous plane of existence, though they may arise in other planes as well. So just an explanation with regard to kama vachara chitta and kama bhumi. So there are 11 kama bhumi, and there are kama vachara chittas. Basically they function in the kama bhumi, but not strictly limited to kama bhumi. So that is the idea. Fine material sphere consciousness, rupa vachara chitta. The fine material sphere is the plane of consciousness corresponding to the fine material plane of existence, or the plane of consciousness pertaining to the states of meditative absorption called the rupa jhanas. We have been discussing it for some times already. Any consciousness which mostly moves about in this realm is understood to belong to the fine material sphere. The rupa jhanas are so called because they are usually attained in meditation by concentrating on a material object, rupa, which may be a device such as the earth, kasina, etc. Right? So in Visuddhi Magga and also in this text itself, in the Abhidhamma Sangaha, there is a presentation of all these meditation objects, that you can take as arammana object, meditative object, to develop your concentration, different types of concentration, or parts of one's own body, etc. So this is probably Asuva meditation. Such an object becomes the basis on which the jhanas are developed. The exalted states of consciousness attained on the basis of such objects are called rupa vachara chitta, consciousness of the fine material sphere. And now arupa vachara chitta, material sphere consciousness. The material sphere is the plane of consciousness corresponding to the immaterial plane of existence, or the plane of consciousness pertaining to the material absorptions, the arupa jhanas. Any consciousness which mostly moves about in this realm is understood to belong to the immaterial sphere. When one meditates to attain the formless meditative states beyond the rupa jhanas, one must discard all objects connected with material form and focus upon some non-material object, such as the infinity of space, etc. The exalted states of consciousness attained on the basis of such objects are called arupa vachara chitta, consciousness on the immaterial sphere. So it's also very clear, when you are developing arupa jhanas, the object of your meditation should be formless. For example, space or consciousness, right? That do not have form. That is how they are termed also. If you look at this planes of existence, akasanam chayatana, sphere of infinite space. So here the focus is on space. Vijnanam chayatana, sphere of infinite consciousness. The focus is on consciousness, limitless consciousness. Akincha, akinchanya yatana, sphere of nothingness.
Neva Sanya Nasanya Yatana. Sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. There is one more. You remember what it is? What it is? Neva Sanya Vadaita Nirodha Samapatti. Attainment of cessation of feeling and perception. That is above this. But that does not have a planes of existence corresponding to that. Now, what about the Lokuttara Chitta? The word Lokuttara, supramundane, is derived from Loka, world, and Uttara, beyond, transcendent to. Now here, when discussing about Lokuttara, there is something that I think you need to give attention to, and you can make notes. What kind of world, it is referring to here? The concept of world is threefold: the world of living beings, Sattaloka, the physical universe, Okasaloka, and the world of formations, Sankhara Loka. That is the totality of conditioned phenomena, physical and mental. So this is something that you need to keep in mind, that the focus all the time in Buddhism is you, your, psychophysical functioning, psychophysical existence, your mind and matter. It is always your mind and matter, because everything is happening within you, not outside you, right? So it does not matter what is the nature of the physical world or whatever, how big it is, how small it is, how many planes of existence. Everything is centered on your own existence, own experience. So that is why it says here is that the notion of world relevant here is the world of formations, Sankhara Loka. That is all mundane phenomena included within the 5 aggregates of clinging. So it is just these 5 aggregates that represent your samsara, with clinging, of course, and without clinging, it is nirvana. Nowhere else. Not in the forest, not in the town, not in the meditation hall. Wherever you go, the nirvana does not stay there. It is only within you. You have to figure out from within yourself. That which transcends the world of conditioned things is the unconditioned element nibbana, and the types of consciousness that directly accomplish the realization of nibbana are called Lokottara Chitta, supramundane consciousness. The other 3 types are called, in distinction, Lokiya Chitta, mundane consciousness. So you have this 4 classification of chittas in terms of avachara and Lokuttara, and then again you have 2 broader classification, Lokuttara Chitta and Lokiya Chittas. We thus see that consciousness can be classified by way of plane into 4 broad divisions. These are the 4 divisions: Kamavachara, Rupavachara, Arupavachara, and Lokuttara Chitta. Consciousness can also be classified on the basis of other principles besides plane. So now there are other classifications that are going to be presented here, and you can always look at the chart. Okay, in the chart it is all very clear. One principle of classification that plays an important role in the Abhidhamma philosophy is kind or nature, jati. With respect to its nature, consciousness divides into 4 classes. Now here again, you have 4 classification of consciousness. If you want, you can note them down. In terms of unwholesome, akusala. So there could be akusala chittas, wholesome kusala chittas, resultant vipaka chittas, functional kriya chittas. So now you can have at least two lists. One is in terms of kamavachara, rupavachara, arupavachara, and lokottara chitta. And the chittas in these different divisions can also be understood in terms of akusala chitta, kusala chitta, vipaka chitta, and kriya chitta. Why a certain type of chittas are called akusala, unwholesome? So the explanation here says that unwholesome consciousness is consciousness accompanied by one or another of the three unwholesome roots: greed, hatred, and delusion. So these are considered to be three most fundamental roots of unwholesomeness: akusala mula, lobha, dosa, and moha. Such consciousness is called unwholesome because it is mentally unhealthy, morally blameworthy, and productive of painful results. So these are the three characteristics attached to the unwholesome roots and also unwholesome chittas. What happens when you have unwholesome chittas? They are considered as mentally unhealthy, morally blameworthy, and productive of painful results. So these are all connected. So when it says morally blameworthy, I think you have an understanding of that. Normally, when you talk about kusala and akusala, morally blameworthy and morally blameless or praiseworthy, you talk of this in the sense of, their effects within you and their effects outside you, and also from the perspective of a noble being, being purisa, wise being. So the criteria here is that in the society, sometimes you would see that majority of the people, when they decide a certain thing, that becomes the norm of the society. That is the right thing to do, right? And something that is not accepted by the society, by the majority of the people, is regarded as something that should not be done. But in the case of Buddhism, it does not depend on if something is supported or not supported by majority of the people. The criteria in Buddhism is that if it is praised or blamed by a wise person, okay, Vinyu Purisa. And this wise person refers to a person who is a Arya Puggala, noble being, who is free from negative mentalities, unwholesome mentalities, and filled with positive ones. On the other hand, wholesome consciousness is consciousness accompanied by wholesome roots. That is non-greed, in other words, generosity, non-hatred or loving kindness, and non-delusion or wisdom. Such consciousness is mentally healthy, morally blameless, and productive of pleasant results. So this is very clear about unwholesome and wholesome types of chittas. Now let's look at the vipaka chittas here. The definition of vipaka chittas. Both wholesome and unwholesome consciousness constitute kamma, volitional action. Those chittas or states of consciousness that arise through the ripening of kamma are called resultants, vipaka chitta. Right? So you have chitta that is representative of wholesome or unwholesome karma, and chittas that are effect, representative of effect, vipaka. These constitute a third class of chitta distinct from the former two, a class that comprises both the results of wholesome karma and the results of unwholesome karma. It should be understood that both karma and its results are purely mental. Karma is volitional activity associated with wholesome or unwholesome chittas. Its results are other chittas which experience the maturation of karma. Maturation of karma. That means vipaka. The fourth class of consciousness, according to the division by way of nature, is called in Pali kiriya or kriya, rendered here as functional, kriya chitta. This type of consciousness is neither karma nor karma resultant. It involves activity. Yet this activity is not karmically determinate, or thus is not capable of producing karmic results. Resultant consciousness and functional consciousness are neither wholesome nor unwholesome. Instead, they are classified as indeterminate, abhyakata. That is consciousness which cannot be determined in terms of the dichotomy of wholesome and unwholesome. Even the vipaka chittas. Kriya chittas, obviously, because they are functional, they are not associated with wholesome or unwholesomeness. Therefore, they are abhyakata. That is understood. But vipaka chittas, they are the resultant chittas. Now you can have akusala vipaka chitta, you can have kusala vipaka chitta, only in the sense that this vipaka, this resultant consciousness, derived from your previous kusala or akusala karma. But once they are classified as resultant consciousness, even though they can be identified as akusala resultant or kusala resultant, but they are categorized as abhyakata, indeterminate. With this, I think we can have a break now for 10 minutes, and we will continue after the break.
Okay, let us continue our discussion. Yes.
They use the word of corruption.
Corruptions, yes. Yeah, people use different words. So corruption is one of the words. But mostly people use defilements for kilesa. So one of the ways, if you want to check the meanings of these key terms, is to look at this Pali Text Society's dictionary, and also the dictionary of Venerable Yana Tiloka. These two. Also nowadays you can look at Margaret Cohn's dictionary. She produced so far 3 volumes, I think, in over 20 years. Because the first one came out in 2001, first volume, and the second volume came out in 2010, I think, and the third volume is published in 2021, and not yet completed. So that is quite exhaustive. Nowadays people refer to that dictionary. When you are using these terms, key terms,
For example, in your essay, if you just write corruptions, the reader may not be able to understand what you mean by the word. So it is better to put kilesa as well within bracket. Affliction is different, no? Affliction means dukkha. It has some connection. It is because of kilesa people experience suffering, but it doesn't seem to represent the exact meaning of kilesa. Corruptions, impurities. Defilements means impurities, right? Impurities. Of course, yes, that is the most popular word. Yes. Any question or remarks so far? If not, let us continue reading the text. Now, yeah. There are some differences, of course. Yes. The differences between kusala chittas in different avachara. You mean different avachara, right? I think that depends on, first of all, how they originate, how they arise. Also, what are the mental factors they are associated with? They are not associated with similar kind of mental factors. I mean, hot water. More. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. What type of chitta? Mm. 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 I don't know in what respect it is said, because based on the presence of mental factors, whatever kind of chitta that is produced in different avacharas, it could be kusala or akusala, should have corresponding effects normally. But in what respect that you are saying, that the kusala chittas of the kama vachara world have stronger effect compared to the kusala chittas of the rupa and arupa avachara. Right. So in that case, I think you need to see all the kusala chittas and avataras together. I did not look at it yet, so I'm not very sure. Where did you find in this book or some other book? Oh, I see. Oh, I see. You can look at the text again if you have, and then probably you can tell me later on in what respect actually they are discussing it. Okay, let us read this part together. Now, here you have a presentation of Kama Vachara Chitta. Now, this is Akusala Chitta, unwholesome consciousness belonging to Kama Vachara world. Now, here, first of all, you have 8 chittas, as you can see in number, and all these 8 chittas have greed or lobha as the root. So, among the 3 roots, lobha is the main factor here. Okay, let us read it together. Tatha katamang kama vacharang somanassa sahagatang dittigata sampayuttang asankarikang ekang somanassa sahagatang dittigata sampayuttang sasankarikang ekang somanassa sahagatang dittigata vipayuttang asankarikang ekang somanassa sahagatang dittigata vipayuttang sasankarikang ekang upekha sahagatang dittigata sampayuttang asankarikang ekang upekha sahagatang dittigata sampayuttang sasankarikang ekang upekha sahagatang dittigata vipayuttang asankarikang ekang upekha sahagatang dittigata vipayuttang sasankarikang ekang imani attapi lobha sahagata chittani nama. So if you look at this list, you'd see that all these 8 chittas are rooted in lobha, but they are classified differently. First 4, for example, from 1 to 4, it is said that they are connected to somanassa. So they arise together with somanassa. Somanassa here means good mind, good feeling, right? Pleasant feeling, joyful feeling. So these first 4, and the next 4 are connected to upekha. Upekha, one of the meaning is indifferent. Okay, yeah, indifferent feeling, neither joy nor sadness. And this expression here, you see here, dittigata sampayutta. The first 2 are dittigata sampayutta. Second 2 are dittigata vipayutta. Connected to view, connected to, not connected with view. Now, ditti here clearly indicates wrong view. This is not sammaditthi. So whenever you have the discussion of ditti without the prefix samma, that is generally understood to be wrong view, michya. And 4 asankarika, 4 sasankarika. You see, asankarika, sasankarika, asankarika, sasankarika, asankarika, and sasankarika. So asankarika means without prompting, sasankarika means with prompting. So prompting means with the support or help of another, even if it is support. For example, if you think of doing something, you plan to do something, and because of this strong plan, you carry out the work. That is also called, performance of an action, being prompted. Or it could be done by the prompting of another person, if it is encouraged by another person, right? If somebody tell you to do something, or if you are inspired to carry out an action because of the words of another. Now here it provides the translation. Of course, you can look at the translation. One consciousness accompanied by joy associated with wrong view, unprompted. One consciousness accompanied by joy associated with wrong view, prompted. So this is how you have the division, basically 8 types, but some are with accompanied by joy, some are accompanied by equanimity, some accompanied by wrong view, some not accompanied by wrong view, some are prompted, some are unprompted, without prompting. So these 8 types of consciousness. Now, why they are called akusala? It is very clear, because they are associated to akusala mula. In this case, loba mula. So these 8 consciousness, you can note down if you like, 8 consciousness rooted in greed. In analyzing unwholesome consciousness, the Abhidhamma first classifies it by way of its most prominent root, mula or hetu, whether greed, hatred, or delusion. Now, here is a remark. Look at this remark here. Greed and hatred, according to Abhidhamma, are mutually exclusive. They cannot coexist within the same chitta. Okay, so what it means is that you cannot have a consciousness which is, containing greed and hatred together. So either you are greedy or you are angry, hateful. Both cannot be done together. Thus, those states of consciousness in which greed is the principal root are termed chittas rooted in greed, of which 8 are enumerated. Those states in which hatred is principal root are termed chittas rooted in greed, of which 2 are enumerated. The third unwholesome root, delusion, is present in every state of unwholesome consciousness. Thus, in those chittas rooted in greed and in those rooted in hatred, delusion is also found as an underlying root. Nevertheless, there are types of consciousness in which delusion arises without the accompaniment of greed or hatred. These chittas, 2 in number, are called consciousness involving sheer delusion, or chittas rooted in delusion. So basically, you have chittas rooted in greed, chittas rooted in hatred, and chittas rooted in delusion. The greed and hatred cannot coexist in the same chitta, but delusion can be present in both greed and hateful chittas, but there can be separate chittas functioning or arising just based on or rooted in delusion alone. So there are now 8 chittas rooted in greed here, 2 more chittas rooted in hatred, and then 2 chittas rooted in delusion. Altogether, 12 akusala chittas. Now, here's a discussion about Lobha Mula Chitta. The Abhidhamma begins its analysis of the 3 classes of unwholesome consciousness by distinguishing the different chittas rooted in greed, as greed is always mentioned first among the unwholesome roots. The Pali word lobha includes all varieties of greed, ranging from intense passion or cupidity to subtle liking and attachment. So when it says chittas rooted in greed, what it means here is that this word lobha can include all forms of attachment, all forms of greed, all forms of likeness, strong likeness, likeness, okay. What about if somebody is attached to do hateful things? Somebody has greed, lobha to do dosa things. What do you think of that? How would it function? What if somebody finds enjoyment in doing hateful things? For example, if somebody enjoys speaking abusive words, what do you think? Normally somebody,
I think it's just enjoyment and not otherwise. It just has to be enjoyment, I think.
so it depends on which akusala mula is functioning as a strong force. If the stress is on enjoyment, that is lova mula chitta. If the stress is on the abusive words, that is dosa mula chitta, right? But both cannot exist in the same moment. There could be preceding and succeeding moments probably, right? Yeah, so you think about it.
Yeah, it's like from the outer influences, you think that it's enjoying like flavor. But things in mind,
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Sorry? That is more like a split personality. One moment happy, another moment hateful. I don't know. Conscious. Fire. That is different. That is not. Buddha's showing of miracle is different, no? That is a presentation of a psychic power, and Buddha, Arhans, they go beyond all this kind of discussion of kusala and akusala. So, appearing together, see, yes, right. Okay, let's continue reading. Consciousness rooted in greed is divided into 8 types on the basis of 3 principles, and we have seen that, right? 3 principles of dichotomization. Yeah, dichotomization. One is the concomitant feeling that is either associated with joy, somanasa sagata, or associated with upekka, right? Second is presence or absence of wrong view. either dittigata sampayutta or dittigata vipayutta. Third is consideration whether the chitta is prompted or unprompted, either sasankarika or asankarika. From the permutations of these three distinctions, 8 types of consciousness are obtained. Okay, now you have these 8 types, but what does it mean by accompanied by joy? What is the meaning of somanassa? One thing you can keep in mind is that even though we are discussing different types of chittas, basically one chitta, its different manifestations, all these things, lobha, dosa, moha, somanassa, upekka, ditti, all these represent cetasika. But you do not have extensive discussion of cetasika here in this chapter, because the focus is on chitta. Without the discussion of cetasika, you cannot discuss chitta. That is the idea. Okay, so when we go to discuss about the cetasikas, the focus would be primarily on the cetasikas. Again, you cannot talk about cetasikas without the discussion of chittas. Okay, so let us try to understand this expression here, somanassa. The word somanassa, joy, is derived from su, pleasant, plus manas, mind. So you have a pleasant mind, right? Thus, it means literally a pleasant mental state. Somanassa is a type of feeling, specifically pleasant mental feeling. All consciousness is accompanied by some feeling, which may be bodily or mental, pleasant, painful, or neutral. So you can have mental feeling or physical feeling, and they can be categorized either as pleasant or painful or neutral, either somanassa or domanassa or upekka, neither pleasant nor painful. Now here somanassa is a feeling which is mental rather than bodily. And pleasant rather than painful or neutral. So two characteristics of somanassa here is that it is a mental feeling and it is pleasant. So these are its characteristics. This feeling accompanies sahagata, this type of consciousness, in that it is inextricably blended with it. Just as when the waters of two rivers meet, they blend together and cannot be distinguished. So what does it mean? Somanassa sahagata dittigata sampayutta asankarikam. First one, yes, asankarikam ekam. So when you say somanassa chitta, so what it is trying to tell us with this simile of waters from two rivers coming together, blending together, right? And you are not able to distinguish which water came from which river. In the same way, when you talk about somanassa sahagata chitta, you cannot distinguish between somanassa and chitta. That is what it means. It is the chitta that is somanassa, and it is this aspect of somanassa that represents the chitta. Clear, right? The Abhidhamma describes 4 chittas rooted in greed that are accompanied by joy. This we have seen already. And the other 4 chittas accompanied by equanimity. The word upekha is often used in the Pali text to signify the lofty spiritual quality or equanimity or impartiality, the state of mind which cannot be swayed by biases and preferences. So normally that is why I think you have this question that what about upekha? So that is why we need to understand that even though this is primarily this word upekha is associated with higher spiritual attainment, when you do not have any kind of bias, you go beyond the idea of duality, right? Subject, object, good, bad, black, white. You live in a state of equanimity, complete equanimity. You do not make any kind of judgment. So that is our general understanding. But as a representative of akusala chitta, it can happen due to, as I said, due to stupidity, due to confusion. Here, however, the word is used simply to mean neutral feeling, a mental feeling which leans neither towards gladness nor dejection. In contrast to pleasant and painful feelings, which experience the object in diametrically opposed ways, upekha experiences the object in a neutral manner. Thus, upekha or equanimous feeling is also called adukkha sukha vedana, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. So this is the description with regard to somanasa sahagata and upekha sahagata. Now, the aspect of ditti. What does it mean by ditti here when it says associated with wrong view? Having divided the greed-rooted consciousness into 2 classes on the basis of feeling as accompanied by joy or by equanimity, the text again divides that same consciousness on the basis of its relationship to wrong view. The word ditti means view, and unless it is specified you are filled with greed. Associated with wrong view means even though you are carrying out an act based on greed, you do not think it is bad or wrong. You are completely convinced by this factor, this mental factor of greed. Why it is wrong view? Because you do not see the harmfulness associated with this consciousness, this view. The view may either reinforce the attachment from which the consciousness springs by providing it with a rational justification, or the view itself may be an object of attachment in its own right. So, do you see the difference? One is that you are led by the view, by the logic or rationalization that what you are doing is right. You are propelled to do it. Another is that you have this likeness of greed towards a view. You are attached to a view. Is it clear? Wrong view is associated with 4 types of consciousness in all. 2 accompanied by joy, 2 accompanied by equanimity. The other 4 are dissociated from wrong view. In that, greed operates in them without any accompanying justification provided by a view. So you carry out the action based on lobha without thinking too much about it. Yeah, so prompted and unprompted means, here prompted means presence or absence of prompting. The multi-significant word sankara in sasankarika and asankarika is used here in a sense specific to the Abhidhamma to mean prompting, instigating, inducement, or the application of an expedient, upaya. So this prompting may be imposed by others, or it may originate from within oneself. This means the means employed may be bodily, verbal, or purely mental. The instigation is bodily when someone induces us by bodily means to give rise to particular type of consciousness which may issue in corresponding actions. It is verbal when the means employed in another's comment or power of persuasion. And it is mental when either by reflection or the determination of the will, we make a deliberate endeavor despite inner resistance to generate certain types of consciousness. So this is also interesting explanation here that when you are prompted, you feel, you make a plan, but it seems like you have, how do you say? You feel a kind of resistance that one part of you want to do it, another part of you does not want to do it. So you have to decide, right? And then finally you take up the action. So you go through a process of deciding that action. Prompting can be associated with either unwholesome or wholesome states of consciousness, as will be shown below. That consciousness which arises spontaneously without prompting or inducement by expedient means is called unprompted. That consciousness which arises with prompting or inducement by expedient means is called prompted. In the greed-rooted class of consciousness, 4 types are unprompted or spontaneous, and 4 types are prompted or induced. There are some examples given later on, and with that example, it will become clear. Now look at this chart here. It is very clear. Now 12 types of consciousness. Of course, we did not study these 4 types yet. So these are the 8 types that we are now, discussing, all rooted in greed, 4, associated with joyful feeling, another 4 with the feeling of equanimity, 4 associated with wrong view, and 4 without wrong view. Yeah. And then 4 prompted, 4 unprompted. In the 2 chittas rooted in hate, both are accompanied by displeasure, feeling of displeasure associated with aversion, and dissociated from wrong view. One is prompted, the other is not prompted. 2 chittas rooted in delusion, feeling of equanimity. One is associated with doubt, the other is restlessness, dissociated from wrong view, and both are unprompted. So once you have some understanding of these 8 types, the other remaining 4, not so difficult to understand. Let's read this. Let's try to finish these 12 types of chittas. Read this together. Dosamula chittani. Do manasa sahagatang patiga sampayutta asankarikang ekang. Do manasa sahagatang patiga sampayuttang sasankarikang ekanti. Imani dvepi patiga sampayutta chittani nama. Now, note that the word used here is patiga. Domanassa is used as opposed to somanassa, displeasure. Patiga is representative of dosa, hatred, aversion. Patiga is sometimes used as synonyms of dosa. Why dosa mula? Because dosa is the root here, right? So it is clear.
Yeah, when it says that, says Theravada Abhidhamma, so that's what we mean by someone something.
What?
When it says that Theravada Abhidhamma, that's what we mean.
No. It doesn't mean that it is associated with right view. What it means is that in this chitta, there is no right or wrong view, because right and wrong view comes before or after. No. If it is so, you cannot think of it in that way. Yeah, look at this description here. Again, unlike consciousness rooted in greed, consciousness rooted in hatred does not arise in association with wrong view, although wrong view can motivate acts of hatred. According to the Abhidhamma, the wrong view does not arise simultaneously with it. Yeah, in the same chitta, but in an earlier time in a different type of chitta. So it is in terms of being present or absent. You see, so that is why I'm saying that it could be either wrong view or right view. Right view could be present in the previous chittas, not in the same moment when there is the chitta of hatefulness. It is like in the same moment, the wrong view and hatefulness cannot be present. Yeah. Domanasa sagata, because it is accompanied by displeasure, right? Patiga Sanyutta. Here, some notes on patiga. This word includes all degrees of aversion, from violent rage to subtle irritation. And these are the two Mohamula Chitta. Let's read them together also. Upekka Sahagatam Vichikicha Sampayuttam Ekam, Upekka Sahagatam Udacha Sampayuttam Ekam Ti. Imani Dwe Mohoha Chittani Nama Ichevang Iti Evang Sabbatha Pi Dwadasa Akusala Chittani Samattani. So these are the 12 Akusala Chittas. You can look at this description by yourself. Let's look at the examples. So in summary, this is the summary. You have 8 Lobamala Chitta, 2 Dosamala Chitta, 2 Mohamala Chitta, altogether 12 Dwadasa Akusala Siyum. Now these are the example. Look at this example. 8 types of consciousness rooted in greed may be illustrated by following cases. With joy, holding the view that there is no evil in stealing, a boy spontaneously steals an apple from a fruit stall. So this is a representative of the first type of chitta. Now here it says spontaneously steal. That means he doesn't plan. or he's not asked by somebody. He's not asked by Buntan to go and steal. Buntan doesn't say the boy to go and steal, right? But after stealing, probably he comes to give you the fruit. So next it says, with joy, holding the same view that, if you steal, you do not commit an evil act. He doesn't have that understanding yet. He steals an apple through the prompting of a friend. Prompting of a friend. The same as 1 and 2, except that the boy does not hold any wrong view. These 4 are parallel to 1 to 4, except that the stealing is done with neutral feeling. The 2 types rooted in hatred may be illustrated thus. These 2 rooted in hatred. With hatred, one man murders another in a spontaneous fit of rage. With hatred, one man murders another after premeditation. One is planned kill, another is just without plan. That happens there. The 2 types rooted in delusion may be illustrated thus. A person due to delusion doubts the enlightenment of the Buddha or the efficacy of the Dhamma as a way of deliverance. A person is so distracted in mind that he cannot focus his mind on an object. 2 chittas rooted in moha. So you may have a chitta doubting the enlightenment of the Buddha or efficacy of the Dhamma as a way to deliverance. And it is because you do not have an understanding, right? So you are filled with doubt. You are deluded. The other is that this is connected actually. Your mind is distracted. You are filled with so many other things that you are not able to focus your mind. Therefore, you are not able to decipher or understand clearly what it is exactly. With this, we can end our class here, right? With the discussion of these 12 types of akusala chitta. The remaining section you can read yourself later on, and then we will go through it very quickly. But one thing you can understand by looking at this chart is that in the entire discussion of 89 types of chitta or 121 chitta, you have just these 12 akusala chitta. Just these 12. So what it means is that most of the chittas are either good or vipaka or kriya, right? Only these 12 are bad. What it also means is that if you are able to deal with these 12 types of chitta only, if you can remove them, you are in a good state.